Hey gang, Trevor here. I wanted to take a few moments just to show some of you how you can manipulate data in the spreadsheet after you've collected information from a Google form. A lot of people kind of go to that point and then they just really don't realize what else you can do with it. So I'm just going to show you some cleanup tools and then how you can create separate reports and then how you can use this in a tool like Awesome Tables. So the spreadsheet that I have in front of you is data that I've collected through a Google form. And you can see here that the names here haven't been capitalized properly. And quite often what happens is we have to clean all this data up. So there's some great functions that are available. I'm not going to go through all the details. This is just a quick overview. But what I've done here is I'm using these different functions that we have available to clean up the data. So you'll notice Bessie Schwartz here is lowercase here, but it's all uppercase here. And once you use these different functions, you can clean all this data up. So I've actually gone through and I could do like 5,000 names in like 2 seconds just by using this proper function. Quite often when we get the data, we have to split it up. I get reports all the time where the people's first name and last name, but we want it split up because we're going to send out a letter, we're going to send emails out, whatever, a certificate, and we don't want both first and second name there. So we use a function called split, which does exactly what it's. Total pledge is basically math. So price per lap times how many laps they actually did. Full number. Now here's a fun one. So here's an area code. There is a phone number. Quite often we end up having people who have this data and they put in a space before each of the items. So you have to actually manually go through and remove each of those spaces. There's actually a function called trim that will remove spaces automatically from the front and end of a cell or data. So that gets rid of those trailing and those leading spaces. So this allows me to clean up all my data really quickly without having to worry about that. There's another function here called left. Left, right also works. So basically, what is the cell you want? What are the number of characters or number of elements that you want to grab out of it? In this case, our postal code here in Canada is based on the 6 characters here, and I just want to grab the first 3. I've also been using a VLOOKUP because I've set up these postal codes on a map and I've said, okay, here's this grouping for this section, here's a grouping for this section. I have a driver to go out to this one area. I want to make sure he hits all the different postal codes that are available. So I've gone through and using a VLOOKUP, it says, okay, I'm going to look up a map. I'm going to find this piece here because I know that Sam is responsible for these elements here. And it automatically assigns the driver Sam. I've also done the same thing with a map for the color because I've color coordinated the map. So that's the first step, is to clean up all that data. Now, what ends up happening with all these data is we get the request of create reports. How do I create a report? And people will copy and paste the information. If the data is already in this spreadsheet, we can manually create these different reports using a query function. And what the query function does, over here, I'm creating a report that I only want these elements here that John is responsible for. Now I could go through and do a filter and stuff, but sometimes it's just easier to do it this way. I create this filter or this query here. So here's the function query, pull the data from this tab here, which is this tab sheet here, select only J, K, L, and O. So I'm actually specifically saying I don't want all the cells. I only want this one, this one, this one, skip these 2 and this one. And I can put that information in there. So here's the specific columns I want. And I only want a criteria that matches where O is equal to John. So this is John's report. The beauty of this is that even though it's in JKLO, I can also switch the order around just by reordering this information here. Keep in mind, it's still pulling the data here. So if I need to make changes, I have to make the changes in the original sheet, but those are automatically updated into here. I can also put a sort function in here so I can list everything by a specific order. All sorts of manipulation that I can do. Now there's a function called import range that will allow me to grab data from one spreadsheet and bring it into another. So even though I may have 15 reports in this one sheet that I'm working on right now, I only want my end user to see just one of those reports. So I would create a new spreadsheet, call it John's report. So it's only he has access to it. And I use that function to take this data here and move it to that other sheet. And again, it's a live link, so any data that gets changed in the original document automatically gets moved into the new document report that we've created. Now, once you've created a tab with different queries in it and the different information that you want to have available to people, you can display it in other ways than a spreadsheet. And a tool like Awesome Table is a great way to do that. The data that you're going to see in the next few tabs is all coming from spreadsheets. So the original source is a spreadsheet, but you can customize how the information is viewed. You can customize the search functionality, all sorts of cool things with it. So at a very basic level, this is something that I've created where people who want to have speakers from our university come and talk to them can go through and find out for all these different information of what we offer, what's available. So they can quickly go through and look at, there's 66 of them, but I can choose by a subject. So I've gone in my spreadsheet somewhere and I've said, hey, you know what? I've got a category called music. Here's what I have for music. If I am in a different course, like English, I'm going to get something different for sessions. So this information, just a very quick, simple way of taking that data and bring it into a searchable and nicer viewing piece of information or display. Again, I've actually done the same thing with a video series that I used to run and should start up again, but we'll see what happens, where all these different pieces here link right to the videos. I can also embed the videos there. I just haven't had time to do that. Here's some other samples that come from Awesome Table. So you can add more graphics and stuff. You can see now we've got a search function that'll actually search through the titles or possibly the description, depending on how you set it up. Again, we have different categories or a specific app, so those things can be set up. Suggestion box that's in here, as well as a graphic layout. And we've seen on our own website for the innovators where the map function is being used. That's all done through Awesome Table. So somewhere there's a spreadsheet with have all the innovators' names, where they live, and the Awesome Table automatically goes and creates that interface that we saw from our website. So that's pretty much a quick overview of what can be done with the spreadsheets and the data. There's lots more other stuff. I'm not a high-level tech guy, but the important thing that I always see is when you get the data, how do we clean it up and how do we separate the data into columns that are usable for us? And then once we have all that data in a spreadsheet somewhere, we can manipulate the heck out of it. And that's where all those query functions and stuff like that come along. I actually do have a course that I've set up called Spreadsheets Without Numbers, because in my mind, this is the most exciting part of spreadsheets. I'm more than happy to share that out with you. If you've got some high-level thoughts about how you'd like to make use of that, by all means, please reach out and we can just chat about it and share that out with our group. And that's pretty much it.